In the heart of an African village lived a poor father who gave his children everything. Yet they abandoned him for the glitter of the city. Years later, when riches faded and regret filled their hearts, they returned to find the man they had left behind. But would a father's love still forgive, or had time closed the door forever? This is the story of Thomas and his children, a tale of betrayal, forgiveness, and the true meaning of family. The cock crowed 3 times in the small village of Katora, where the earth smelled of fresh rain and the houses were built of red clay. Life was slow there, measured not by clocks, but by the rise of the sun and the cry of goats in the morning. In one corner of the village lived a poor farmer named Thomas, a man whose hands were always stained with soil and whose back carried the marks of many harvests. Thomas had only one treasure in this world: his 3 children, Michael, Sarah, and David. Their mother had died many years ago, and Thomas raised them alone with the little he had. He cooked for them, told them stories by the fire, and sold cassava and yams in the market just to pay their school fees. But the children were not blind to the poverty that surrounded them. They saw other young people in the city wearing fine clothes, carrying shiny phones, and driving cars that roared like lions. The village seemed too small for their dreams. One evening, after a long day in the fields, Thomas sat on the wooden stool outside his hut. His face was tired, but his eyes were soft with love as he watched his children talking in whispers a few steps away. They were speaking about leaving, though he did not yet know it. "Michael," Sarah said, her voice sharp with excitement, "I cannot stay here forever. Look at us. We wear torn slippers while others in the city are enjoying life." "I want more, Michael." The eldest nodded. "I have heard of jobs in Lagos. If we go, we can work, make money, and change our lives. Father will only keep us stuck in this village with his farming. I don't want to die." Poor David, the youngest, was quiet. His heart was torn between love for his father and the hunger for a brighter future. That night, the 3 children came to Thomas. Their decision was already made. "Father," Michael began, avoiding his father's eyes, "we are leaving for the city tomorrow. We want to build a new life." The words cut Thomas like a knife. His lips trembled, but he forced a weak smile. "My children, the city is not as kind as you think. I may be poor, but I have kept you safe here. Out there, the world is like a hungry animal. Please stay. Let us build our lives slowly together." But the children had already hardened their hearts. Sarah folded her arms. "Father, you do not understand. We cannot remain here and suffer. We need a better future." Thomas looked at each of them, his chest heavy with sorrow. He had sacrificed everything for these children, yet they were ready to abandon him. Still, he did not curse them. Instead, he whispered, "If you must go, then go. But remember, no matter how far you travel, the road back to your father's house will never close." The next morning, before the sun had risen, the children packed their few clothes into small bags. Villagers watched as they boarded the old bus that came once a day to Katora. Dust rose into the air as the engine coughed and carried them away. Thomas stood by the roadside, his heart breaking. He waved until the bus became a dot in the distance. Then he walked back to his lonely hut, carrying the silence of betrayal in his chest. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Thomas worked alone in the fields, his body weaker than before. Sometimes he sat by the fire and stared into the flames, remembering the laughter of his children. At night, he whispered their names in prayer, asking God to keep them safe, even though they had abandoned him. In the city, life was not easy at first. Michael, Sarah, and David faced hunger, rejection, and nights of sleeping on the cold ground. But little by little, things began to change. Michael found work as a trader, Sarah joined a tailoring shop, and David learned carpentry. With time, their pockets grew heavier. They bought fine clothes, rented a better house, and tasted the sweetness of success. Yet with every new step forward, they pushed the memory of their father further back. Letters were not written, money was not sent, and the old man in Katora remained forgotten. But fate is patient. Fate waits, like the slow rising of the sun. What the children did not know was that the city's light cannot forever cover the shadows of the past. And so the story begins, of children who chose riches over love, and of a father who waited in silence. The city was nothing like the quiet village of Katora. Its streets never slept. The air was heavy with the noise of car horns, shouting traders, and the smell of roasted meat mixing with smoke from burning rubbish. For Michael, Sarah, and David, it was like stepping into another world. At first, the city rejected them. They had no relatives, no connections, no safe place to lay their heads. They slept on benches and under shop shades, clutching their small bags so thieves would not take the little they owned. Hunger taught them the bitterness of survival. One morning, as the sun burned hot over the crowded streets, Michael decided he could no longer beg for food. He approached a man selling second-hand clothes at the roadside. "Sir," he said, "let me carry your goods. I will work hard." The man, seeing determination in Michael's eyes, gave him a chance. That small chance opened a door. Sarah found her own path when she entered a tailoring shop. The owner, a strict woman named Madam Grace, agreed to teach her how to sew. Sarah's fingers were quick, and soon she was making beautiful dresses that attracted customers. David, though the youngest, discovered carpentry. He followed an old craftsman named Mr. Benson, who took him in like an apprentice. David's hands shaped wood with surprising skill, and soon he could make chairs and tables that people admired. The days turned into months, and slowly the children rose. They moved from sleeping on cold cement floors to renting a small room. They ate good food, wore clean clothes, and began to walk with pride. But with pride came forgetfulness. Letters to their father were never written. The thought of Thomas, bending under the weight of farming tools, faded like smoke. They told themselves, "We will send him money later, when we have more." But later never came. Then came a twist of fortune. Michael met a wealthy businessman who admired his energy and taught him how to trade goods between cities. Money began to flow into his hands like water. He bought a small car, the first in the family. Sarah's sewing skills made her famous in the neighborhood. Women with money came to her for dresses, and her name spread. She began dreaming of owning her own fashion shop. David, too, was not left behind. With his carpentry, he started supplying furniture to schools and offices. He was praised as a young man with talent. They gathered at night in their rented apartment, eating fried chicken and drinking sodas. Laughter filled the room. Michael raised his cup one evening and said, "We are no longer villagers. We are people of the city now." Sarah clapped her hands in excitement. "Yes, Father's small hut is behind us. Look at us now, rising like stars." But David was silent. His heart was not as hard as the others. When he lay down at night, he remembered Thomas's tired face, his gentle warning, "The world is like a hungry animal." Sometimes he dreamed of his father, eating alone, staring at an empty doorway where his children once sat. But when he spoke of it, Michael waved him off. "Forget the village," Michael said firmly. "We will go back one day, but not now. We must build our empire first." So the years rolled on. They grew richer, their names respected. Yet deep inside, something was missing. The city gave them money, but it did not give them peace. Their hearts carried a silent emptiness they did not understand. And while they danced in the noise of the city, far away in Katora, their father Thomas sat by a dying fire, whispering their names into the night. The city had crowned Michael, Sarah, and David with wealth. But wealth is like fire. It gives warmth, yet it can also burn. At first, everything looked golden. Their businesses thrived, money flowed, and people respected them. But slowly, cracks began to show. Michael, the eldest, was the first to taste trouble. In his hunger to grow faster, he trusted a friend with a large sum of money for a big trading deal. The friend disappeared overnight. Michael's anger was like a storm. "How could he betray me?" he shouted, pounding the table. But deep in his heart, he remembered his father's words. The world is like a hungry animal. Sarah, too, began to feel the weight of city life. She had opened her own fashion shop, filled with colorful fabrics and shiny sewing machines. Customers came in plenty, but so did jealousy. Competitors spread lies about her work. Some even copied her designs. Sarah cried at night, asking, "Why do people hate me when I have done nothing wrong?" David, though calmer than his siblings, carried a heavier burden. His furniture business grew, but one day, a school refused to pay him for months of work. He returned home with empty pockets and pain in his chest. That night he whispered, "Father was right. The city is not kind." Despite their struggles, they still refused to remember Thomas. They told themselves, "We cannot return to the village empty-handed. Let us push more, earn more, then we will go back in glory." But glory is slippery, and time waits for no one. One evening, as they sat together in their big apartment, silence filled the room. The laughter that once overflowed was gone. Each of them carried wounds the others could not heal. David broke the silence. "Do you ever think of father?" Michael frowned. "Why bring that up now?" "Because," David said softly, "I dream of him often. I see him sitting alone by the fire. I hear him coughing. I wake up with tears. Maybe he needs us." Sarah turned her face away. Her eyes shone with hidden guilt. She too had dreamed of their father, but she buried the thought under new clothes and gold jewelry. Michael's pride stood tall. "We cannot go back to that mud hut now. What will people say? That the city defeated us?" But even as he spoke, his heart trembled. For the first time, he wondered if wealth was worth the price of abandoning the man who had given them life. That same week, a strange thing happened. A letter arrived from the village, written by an old neighbor. The handwriting shook like the wind. Inside were only a few words. "Your father is sick. He asks for you." The letter hit them like thunder. Sarah broke down in tears, her sobs shaking the walls. David pressed the paper to his chest, his body heavy with regret. Michael sat in silence, his eyes dark, his pride wrestling with guilt. The city no longer looked bright. The noise of the streets sounded like mocking laughter. The money in their pockets felt like ashes. For the first time in many years, they realized the truth. Wealth had blinded them. Pride had chained them. And their father, their only father, had been left to suffer alone. The letter lay on the table, like a burning coal. None of them dared to touch it again, yet its fire refused to die. The words, "Your father is sick. He asks for you," echoed in their minds day and night. Sarah could not sleep. She tossed on her bed, hearing her father's voice in the crackling fire of memory. "My children, no matter how far you travel, the road back to your father's house will never close." Tears soaked her pillow, but when morning came, she painted her face with powder and wore a smile, hiding her guilt from the world. David grew quieter. His hands carved wood in his workshop, but his heart was heavy. Each strike of the hammer felt like a question. Why did you leave him? Why so long? He wanted to leave for the village immediately, yet fear held him back. Fear that their father would not forgive them. Fear that the villagers would laugh at their shame. Michael, the eldest, wore his pride like armor. He stood tall in public, but at night he sat alone, staring at his car, his clothes, his house. None of it brought him peace. The letter haunted him like a ghost. Still, he muttered to himself, "If we return now, people will think we failed in the city. Let us wait. We will go when father is better, but time does not wait for pride." One evening, the three siblings gathered at their dining table. The food before them was untouched. Sarah broke the silence first. Her voice trembled. "I want to go back. Father is sick. What if he dies before we see him again?" Michael slammed his fist on the table. "Do not speak of death. Father is strong. He will survive until we are ready." David looked into his brother's eyes. "And when will we be ready, Michael? We have money, we have clothes, but what use are they if father leaves this world without our faces being the last he sees?" Michael's jaw tightened. He wanted to shout, to silence his siblings, but deep inside, his heart was crumbling. For the first time, he felt fear, not fear of losing wealth, but fear of losing the man who had carried him on his shoulders as a boy. Still, his pride fought. "If we go now, what do we bring him? Empty hands? Our businesses are not yet stable. Let us wait one more year." Sarah burst into tears. "One more year? Michael, we already waited too long. We left him in that village poor and alone while we enjoyed the city. If father closes his eyes before we return, will your money bring him back?" Her words pierced the room like a spear. Michael turned his face away, hiding the wetness forming in his eyes. That night, each of them lay awake in their separate rooms, swallowed by thoughts. Sarah prayed silently, David wept quietly, and Michael clenched his fists until his palms bled. In the village of Katora, meanwhile, Thomas lay weak on his mat. His body was thin, his hair white as cotton. Yet his heart was not filled with anger. He coughed, raised his eyes to the thatched roof, and whispered, "God, keep my children safe. Even if they forget me, do not let the world harm them." The villagers shook their heads. "These children have abandoned their father," they murmured. "See how he suffers alone." But Thomas never cursed them. Instead, he smiled faintly whenever their names were mentioned. Back in the city, fate prepared another twist. One morning, a stranger from the village arrived at their doorstep. His clothes were dusty, his face tired from travel. He looked at the three siblings and said in a low voice, "I come from Katora. Your father's sickness grows worse. If you love him, go now." The words struck them like thunder after lightning. Pride could no longer cover their guilt. The time for excuses was ending. The morning was heavy with silence. Michael, Sarah, and David stood in their living room, the letter from the village still lying on the table. For days, they had wrestled with their pride, But the stranger's message had broken their last defense. Their father was dying, and time was no longer their friend. It was Sarah who finally spoke. Her eyes were swollen from tears. "I don't care what people say. I am going back. If father refuses to see me, at least I will kneel by his door and cry until my soul finds peace." David nodded firmly. "I will go with you. I cannot live with this guilt any longer." All eyes turned to Michael, the eldest. His face was hard, but his heart was softening. He had always carried the weight of being the leader, the one who made the decisions. Yet in this moment, leadership felt like chains. He sighed deeply, his voice low. "Then we go. Today. Let us not waste another sunrise." The three packed their finest clothes, but for the first time, the clothes felt like shame instead of pride. Sarah filled a small bag with food and medicine for their father. David carried tools he thought might be useful to repair their old hut. Michael, silent and stiff, carried money in his pocket. Money that suddenly felt too small to cover years of neglect. They boarded the bus that rattled along the dusty road to Katora. The journey was long, but the silence inside the bus was longer. Sarah leaned against the window, watching trees rush past, her thoughts drowning in memories. Her father laughing as he told them moonlight stories, her father bending low in the farm, while sweat dripped down his face, her father's tired smile when he gave them the last piece of yam. She wept quietly. David sat with his head bowed. Every bump in the road felt like judgment. He remembered nights in the city when he ate roasted meat while his father may have gone hungry. He whispered, "Father, forgive me," though Thomas could not yet hear him. Michael clenched his fists. He tried to keep his tears hidden, but deep inside, he feared the worst. What if father refuses to forgive us? What if we arrive too late? The thought of losing his father without hearing his voice again was like a knife in his chest. As the bus rolled deeper into the countryside, the city noise faded. The smell of dust and farmland returned. Goats crossed the road, children waved as the bus passed, and the familiar rhythm of village life drew closer. Each mile tightened the knot in their stomachs. When the bus finally stopped at Katora, the siblings stepped down slowly, their fine shoes touching the same dusty ground they had once left behind. Villagers gathered, whispering to one another. Some shook their heads, others folded their arms. "See them," one old woman muttered. "They left their father to suffer. Now they return. When he is dying, shame burned their faces. But they kept walking, hearts pounding, until the familiar clay hut of their childhood appeared. The walls looked older, weaker, and the roof sagged with age. Smoke no longer rose from the kitchen. The compound was quiet, too quiet. Sarah clutched David's arm. "Do you hear anything? Is he alive?" David swallowed hard. "We must go in." Michael stepped forward, his legs heavy. For years, he had walked with pride in the city, but now every step felt like a punishment. He pushed open the door gently. Inside, Thomas lay on a mat, his body thin, his breath slow. His eyes were closed, and for a moment, fear gripped them. Was it too late? "Father," Sarah cried, rushing to his side. She held his hand, trembling. "It's me, Sarah, your daughter. Please, wake up." Thomas stirred, his eyelids opening slowly. His eyes, though weak, still carried warmth. He looked at them for a long moment, as if making sure the vision was real. His lips parted, and a faint smile appeared. My children, you came. Tears flooded their eyes. They fell to their knees, crying, Father, forgive us. We left you. We abandoned you. We chased wealth and forgot love. Please forgive us before it is too late. Thomas raised his trembling hand and placed it on their heads. His voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried the strength of a father's love. My heart never hated you. I prayed for you every night. If you have returned, then my soul is full. You are forgiven, the siblings wept louder, their tears mixing with the dust on the floor. The hut, though poor and small, felt warmer than all the riches of the city. For the first time in many years, they sat by their father's side, holding his hands, feeding him food, listening to his faint laughter. And in that moment, they knew the city had given them wealth, but only their father could give them peace. The news of their return spread through Katora like wildfire. Before the sun had climbed high, the whole village was buzzing. Old men at the market clicked their tongues. Women, pounding yam in their mortars, whispered loudly. Children ran barefoot, peeping through the doorway of Thomas's compound. The children have come back, they said. Yes, after many years of forgetting their father, another replied. Now that the old man is sick, they return like strangers, someone else added. The words stung, though the villagers did not say them directly to their faces. Still, the siblings felt the weight of every stare, every silence, every whisper. Inside the hut, Thomas sat, propped against the wall, his children around him. His body was weak, but his spirit was alive. Sarah spooned porridge into his mouth, her tears falling with each bite. David fetched water from the well, while Michael swept the compound, something he had not done since his youth. Thomas smiled faintly. My children, your hands are soft with city life, yet you serve me now with love. This is wealth greater than gold. But outside, the villagers were not so quick to forgive. When Sarah went to the market, the women looked at her fine clothes and muttered, She has money for powder and jewelry. But where was she when her father's roof leaked in the rain? When David carried water, young men smirked. He builds furniture for strangers in the city, but left his father to sleep on a broken bed. Even Michael, once so proud, felt his pride melt like wax in fire. When he walked through the streets, people whispered, There goes the eldest. He thought himself a man of the city, but even he forgot his father. The shame burned them, but Thomas saw their pain. One evening, as they sat together under the moonlight, he spoke gently. My children, do not let the voices of men break you. Their words are sharp, but they will heal when your actions speak louder. Live with love. Serve with humility. In time, even the hardest hearts will forgive. The next day, the siblings decided to act. Sarah took her sewing machine and set it up in the compound, offering to mend torn clothes for villagers free of charge. David repaired broken stools and benches, refusing any payment. Michael, with the money he carried, bought food and shared it with hungry neighbors. At first, the villagers were suspicious. They said, This is only a show. They will soon return to the city and forget again. But when days turned into weeks and the children continued to serve, something began to change. An old woman, whose roof leaked badly, wept when David repaired it with his own hands. May God bless you, child, she whispered, her voice breaking. A widow, who could not afford new clothes for her children, praised Sarah for sewing garments from scraps of cloth. You are a daughter to me now, she said, hugging her. Michael, once proud, now carried baskets of yams to widowers and orphans. The villagers, who once sneered, began to nod with respect. "He has changed," they admitted. Inside, Thomas watched with joy. His children were no longer blinded by pride. They had tasted the sweetness of service, the peace of humility. Though his body was weak, his heart was strong. But life is never without twists. One evening, as the siblings sat by the fire, a messenger arrived from the city. He carried troubling news. Business rivals had taken over their shops. Debts were rising, and if they did not return soon, all their hard work would be lost. The siblings stared at each other in silence. The city called them back with the voice of money, while the village held them with the voice of love. And once again, they stood at a crossroad. The messenger's words hung in the air like thunder waiting to strike. "Your shops are in danger. Rivals are taking your customers. Debts are piling. If you delay, you may lose everything." Michael's heart pounded. He had worked for years to build his business. To see it collapse in one season was unthinkable. He rubbed his forehead and muttered, "We must go back. We cannot throw away what we suffered to build." Sarah looked torn. She remembered the hum of her sewing machines, the bright colors of fabrics, the women who came to her shop. But then she turned to her father, weak on his mat, his eyes tired yet full of peace. "Brother," she said softly, "what is wealth if father dies alone? Who will wear my dresses if my heart is in mourning?" David's voice was firm. "I cannot leave father again. I abandoned him once, and it still burns me. I would rather lose my carpentry business than lose the chance to serve him now." Michael rose to his feet, his voice sharp. "Do you not see? If we lose our wealth, how will we care for him? With poverty, will love alone buy his medicine?" Thomas, who had been silent, coughed gently. His children turned to him. His voice was weak but steady. "My sons, my daughter, you think wealth is what I need. But look at me. I lived these many years without your riches. What I hungered for was not money, but your faces, your laughter, your love. The city may call you, but remember this: money lost can be rebuilt, but time lost with your father will never return." His words fell like heavy stones into their hearts. Sarah wept openly. David bowed his head. Even Michael, though stubborn, felt his pride breaking. That night, none of them slept. Michael sat outside, staring at the moon. The fields stretched before him, the same fields he had once despised. He remembered his father bent over with a hoe, sweating to feed them. For the first time, Michael realized their father had been rich all along, not in money, but in sacrifice. By dawn, the decision was made. Michael called his siblings together. His voice was rough, but his eyes were wet. "We stay. Let the city take what it wants. We will build again when father is gone. But now, he is our treasure." Sarah hugged him tightly, relief flooding her heart. David smiled with quiet strength. For the first time, all three stood as one. The villagers, hearing of their decision, were surprised. "These city children are truly changing," they said. "To choose their father over wealth, that is rare." Days turned into weeks. Their businesses in the city collapsed completely. Letters arrived confirming their losses, but the siblings no longer mourned. They worked the land with Thomas, cooked food together, fetched water, and laughed by the fire at night. Thomas grew weaker, yet happier. One evening, as the crickets sang and the moon glowed bright, he whispered, "My children, I am poor in body, but tonight I am rich in spirit. You have given me what money could never buy, your love. But fate was not done with them. Just when peace seemed to settle, a sudden illness struck Thomas, stronger than before. His cough deepened, his strength faded, and the siblings feared that time was running out faster than they expected. The night was heavy with silence. The crickets sang outside, but inside Thomas's hut, the sound was only coughing. His body shook with each breath, his chest rising and falling like a weak drum. The siblings sat around him, their faces pale with fear. "Father, drink this water," Sarah whispered, lifting a cup to his lips. He sipped slowly, his hands trembling. David knelt by the mat, holding his father's arm. "Stay with us, Father. Do not leave yet. We have only just come back." Michael stood by the doorway, his face shadowed by the moonlight. He had always been the strongest, the one who spoke boldly, but now his voice was broken. "Father, forgive me. Hold on a little longer. I cannot bear to lose you now." Thomas opened his eyes weakly. His voice was faint, like the rustling of dry leaves. "My children, do not fear death. Every man must walk that road. What matters is love, and you have given me that. I am not afraid." His words stabbed their hearts. Sarah burst into tears. "No, you cannot speak like that. You must live to see your grandchildren, to tell us more stories." Thomas smiled faintly, though pain covered his face. "The story I wanted to tell is already written in your return. That is enough for me." The siblings refused to give up. At dawn, they carried him to the village healer. The old man gave herbs and whispered prayers, but his eyes told the truth. Thomas's days were few. Back in the hut, they took turns watching over him. Sarah cooked light soup, feeding him spoon by spoon. David repaired his bed so he could lie comfortably. Michael, who once thought money could solve everything, now fetched water and washed his father's feet with his own hands. The villagers watched with surprise. "See how they serve him," they said. "Perhaps they are no longer the same children who abandoned him." But inside, the siblings wrestled with fear. Every cough sounded like a drumbeat of time. Every weak smile felt like a goodbye. At night, they prayed together, kneeling on the floor. Sarah prayed for mercy, David for forgiveness, and Michael for one more chance to prove his love. One evening, Thomas called them close. His eyes glowed with peace, though his body was frail. "My children, listen. Life is like a river. Sometimes it is calm, sometimes it floods, but it always flows forward. I may soon cross to the other side. Do not waste your days chasing shadows of wealth. Love one another, stay humble, and remember that family is the only true treasure." They wept, clinging to his hands. David sobbed, "Father, do not leave us yet. Give us more time." Thomas coughed, then whispered, "Time is not mine to give. It belongs to God." The next morning, his illness worsened. He could barely speak, and his breathing grew shallow. The siblings sat in silence, their hearts heavy, waiting for a miracle. And then, just when the shadow of death seemed certain, something unexpected happened. A traveling doctor passed through the village on his way to another town. Hearing of the sick old man, he stopped at the hut. After examining Thomas, he said, "This man needs stronger medicine. If I treat him, he may yet see more days." Hope lit their hearts like fire. They gathered their money, even the last coins they had saved, and gave it without hesitation. The doctor treated Thomas with care, leaving instructions for his recovery. For days they waited, breath held, as their father fought between life and death. And then, Slowly, the cough eased. His strength began to return. His smile grew brighter. Sarah hugged him tightly. David laughed with relief. Michael, the proud eldest, wept openly for the first time. Their father had not left them. Not yet. The sun rose gently over Keturah, spreading golden light across the fields. Inside Thomas's hut, hope also rose. His cough had softened. His strength returned, little by little. He could sit upright without trembling, and his voice carried more life than before. Sarah hummed softly as she swept the floor. David fetched firewood from the forest, and Michael pounded yam in the mortar, sweat running down his face. The villagers who passed by shook their heads in amazement. "See the proud children," one man said, "working like villagers again." "Yes," another replied. "Perhaps the sickness of their father has healed their hearts too." Inside, Thomas watched his children with gentle eyes. "My children," he said one evening, "life has given us a second chance. Do not waste it. This hut may be small, but if love fills it, it is a palace." Those words stayed with them. They began to live not as city people or villagers, but simply as family. Sarah cooked with her father, learning his favorite dishes. David followed him to the fields, even though Thomas could not work much. Michael sat by his side, asking questions he had never asked before. "Father, how did you survive all those years without us?" Thomas smiled, his eyes distant. "I survived with hope. I believed one day you would return. Hope is stronger than hunger." The siblings bowed their heads in shame, but Thomas lifted their chins with his frail hands. "Do not live in regret. Regret is like carrying a heavy stone. Instead, live in gratitude. Every day we have now is a gift." From that day, their hearts changed even more. Sarah, once proud of her fine clothes, now dressed simply. She spent her days sewing for villagers, sometimes without pay, finding joy in service. David repaired broken roofs, doors, and stools, refusing any reward, saying, "This is my way of thanking God for keeping Father alive." Michael, who had once chased big profits, began to share food freely, saying, "The riches of the city are nothing if my father's stomach is empty." Slowly, the whispers of the village softened. Where there was once mockery, there was now respect. People said, "These children have truly learned." Their father is blessed. One afternoon, Thomas gathered them under the mango tree. His voice was stronger now. "My children, you have learned what I prayed for you to know, that family is life and love is wealth. But remember, life will test you again. When the test comes, do not fall back into pride." The siblings nodded, but they did not yet know how soon the test would come. For one evening, a visitor arrived from the city. He was an old friend of Michael, dressed in fine clothes, carrying promises. "Michael, Sarah, David, your names are not forgotten in Lagos. If you return, opportunities are waiting. The city has forgiven your debts. You can rebuild everything." The siblings froze. The city, the place that had once given them riches and pride, was calling again. The visitor's words were sweet, but in their hearts, they felt the danger. Thomas watched silently. He knew this was the true test. Would his children choose love over greed, family over fortune? The visitor's words hung in the air like a spell. "Michael, Sarah, David, your names are remembered. Investors are ready. If you return now, you can rebuild your shops, your wealth, your honor. The city is waiting." Michael's heart beat fast. He saw images of his old office, his car, the respect he once commanded. A voice inside him whispered, "This is your chance." Take it, Sarah frowned, folding her arms. The city nearly destroyed us once. Have we already forgotten the tears of our father? David shook his head firmly. I will not go. I would rather farm in peace than bow to riches that disappear like smoke. But Michael's face hardened. You are speaking like children. Do you not see? If we return to the city, we can become rich again. With money, we can buy medicine for father, build him a bigger house, give him comfort in his old age. Thomas coughed softly from his mat. His eyes, calm but piercing, turned to Michael. My son, is it comfort you want for me or honor for yourself? Remember, a house of gold is empty if love does not live there. Michael's jaw tightened. He could not answer. That night, tension filled the hut. Sarah sat with Thomas, her hands shaking as she wove cloth. David sharpened tools in silence, his face stern. Michael paced outside, staring at the road that led to the city, torn between desire and duty. In the morning, the visitor pressed again. Michael, time waits for no man. If you delay, others will take the chance. Come with me now. Michael looked at his siblings. Perhaps we can go for a short time. We rebuild, then return. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Brother, do you not see? That is the same promise we made years ago when we first left father. We said we would come back quickly, but we stayed away until he grew weak and lonely. Must history repeat itself? Her words struck like thunder. Michael remembered the day they had abandoned Thomas, leaving him in the dusty yard, waving his frail hand as they disappeared. His pride broke, and he covered his face with his palms. I do not know how to let go, he whispered. The city still burns in my heart. Thomas reached out his thin hand. My son, the city is not evil, but greed is. If you must return, go with wisdom, not pride, but ask yourself, what will you do if you come back and I am gone? Silence. The words cut deeper than any wound. Michael trembled. He looked at his father's sunken face, at Sarah's swollen eyes, at David's steady hands. Suddenly, the city seemed far and empty. I will not go, he said at last, his voice breaking. Let the city keep its riches. I will keep my father. The visitor, seeing their resolve, shook his head. Fools, he muttered, you choose poverty over power. Then he turned and left, his footsteps fading into the distance. Inside the hut, relief flooded their hearts. Sarah wept with joy. David placed his hand on Michael's shoulder. Thomas smiled weakly, whispering, Now I know you have truly changed. But even as peace returned, a new challenge began. With their ties to the city cut, the siblings faced the reality of life in the village, hard labor, little food, an uncertain future. Their greatest test was not yet behind them. It was only beginning. The visitor's footsteps had barely faded when reality struck. The siblings had shut the door to the city, but now the hunger of village life stared them in the face. The yam barn was almost empty. The little money they had left had gone to Thomas's medicine. The rainy season had delayed, and the soil was dry. One evening, as Sarah scraped the bottom of the pot, she whispered, There is nothing left for tomorrow. David sighed, setting down his axe. We will manage somehow. A man's stomach can cry, but it is better than a father's heart crying. I'm Michael, who once handled big accounts in the city, now struggled to dig ridges in the stubborn ground. His palms blistered, his back ached, but he said nothing. He remembered his father's words. Love is wealth. If sweat was the price of love, he would pay it. The days grew harder. They ate once a day, sometimes only roasted maize. Sarah grew thin, but refused to complain. David offered to sell his tools in the market, but Thomas stopped him. "No, my son. A man without tools is like a bird without wings. We will endure." At night, the siblings sat around the fire, their stomachs empty, but their hearts strangely full. They shared stories of their childhood, of games under the mango tree, of their mother's laughter. Even Thomas, weak as he was, joined in, his eyes glowing like a boy again. "See," he said one evening, "even hunger cannot steal our joy when love sits with us." Still, hardship pressed hard. The villagers watched curiously. Some mocked them. "These children thought they were kings in the city. Now look at them, struggling like the rest of us." But others were moved. One old woman, Mama Ruth, came to their hut with a basket of cassava. "Your father once helped me when my husband died. I cannot forget his kindness. Take this," and eat. Her gift was small, but it lit hope. Soon, others followed. A neighbor shared beans. Another brought palm oil. The family realized something. Kindness sown long ago was now returning as harvest. Michael was humbled. "In the city, I thought riches came from business alone. But here I see, true riches are built from kindness and community." David nodded. "Yes, a man who helps others never dies poor." Through hunger and help, their bond grew unshakable. They worked the dry land together, sang while pounding yam, laughed even when their clothes were torn. Poverty pressed them, but it could not break them. One evening, as the first rain finally fell, Thomas sat outside, letting the drops touch his face. His children stood around him. "My children," he said softly, "I have seen your love in plenty and in lack. You are ready now. Even if I close my eyes tonight, my heart will rest." Their eyes filled with tears. Sarah shook her head. "No, Father. We want you to see us stand fully as a family again, not just in struggle, but also in blessing." Thomas smiled faintly. "Blessing always comes after fire. You have walked through the fire. Soon, you will see the blessing." And as the rains soaked the earth, a new season quietly began, both for the land and for their hearts. The rains fell for many days, turning the dry earth soft again. Hope returned to Keturah. Green shoots pushed out of the soil, and the smell of new life filled the air. Inside Thomas's hut, the family also bloomed. His strength returned little by little. He could now walk slowly to the mango tree, leaning on David's arm. Sarah's laughter filled the compound again, and Michael, once proud, now rose at dawn to fetch water with the villagers. One evening, Thomas gathered them under the mango tree. The sunset bathed the sky in gold. He looked at each of them, Michael, Sarah, David, with eyes full of pride. "My children," he said, his voice strong though soft, "I once feared I would die alone. But God has given me more than I asked. You left me, yes, but you returned with hearts changed. That is all a father desires. Not riches, not gifts, but children who remember his love." They bowed their heads, tears shining in their eyes. Sarah whispered, "Father, we wronged you, but you forgave us. That forgiveness saved our souls." Michael added, "I chased the city, thinking it was everything. But the true treasure was here, in your hut, in your love." David held his father's hand. "We promise never to leave you again. Wherever you are, we will be." Thomas smiled. "Then my heart is at peace. Whatever tomorrow brings, I am rich." The villagers, who once mocked, now respected them deeply. They saw the siblings in the farms, at the market, in the compound with their father. People whispered, "Truly, they have changed. Their father is blessed indeed." The months passed. The harvest came. The fields yielded yams, cassava, and maize in plenty. The family worked together, sweating side by side, but laughter filled the air. They had little compared to their city wealth, but their hearts overflowed with joy. One afternoon, after the harvest was gathered, Thomas called them again. His body was weak, but his spirit shone like fire. "My children," he said, "my journey is almost finished. Do not fear when I am gone. Live as one. Share what you have. Care for one another. Let love lead you always." The children clung to him, tears falling. "We will, Father. We swear before God and before the earth." That night, Thomas closed his eyes peacefully. He did not wake in the morning. The village mourned, but not with sorrow alone, because his children had honored him in life and would carry his legacy in death. At his burial, Michael spoke with a steady voice. "We left our father once, chasing shadows, but we returned to find the light. May no child abandon their parent, for the love of a father and mother is greater than gold." Sarah added through tears, "Let all families remember, wealth fades, but love remains." David placed his hand on the fresh mound of earth and whispered, "Rest, Father. Your children have learned. We will walk the path you showed us." The drums of the village beat softly that evening. The fire burned bright, and though Thomas was gone, his presence filled the air. His children were no longer proud, no longer lost. They were united, humbled, and healed. And so the story of Thomas and his children spread far and wide, carried by travelers, told by elders under the moonlight. It became a lesson for generations. Dear viewers, what lesson did you take away from this dramatic tale? We'd love to hear from your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story, give us a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest updates. Thanks for watching and stay blessed.